couple of problems that we've talked about often on this program. First, too often when someone gets out of prison, they end up heading right back in. Criminal justice activists say it's often because there just aren't a lot of opportunities for ex-cons. Frame that against the fact that right now we have a massive worker shortage and millions of open jobs in America. Might there be a way of solving both problems at once? Governor Whitmer and Attorney General Dana Nessel think so. This week, they announced an initiative called Jobs Court. It is near and dear to the heart of our Attorney General, and Dana Nessel is back with us on Flashpoint to talk about it. And before we dig into how this works, let's start with the fact that before anyone starts ringing alarm bells, we are talking about low-level, non-violent offenders who would be eligible for this, right?
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit then about how exactly you would see this working.
Well, we have so many diversion programs in various courts around the state to begin with. We have sobriety court, drug court, mental health court, veterans court. So we've had long experimentations with these diversionary courts, and we know they work. And one of the things that I've seen over the course of my career, spent many years as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney working for indigent defendants, is that so oftentimes, you can tell a person to get a job, but it's nearly impossible for them to do. So we're in this weird, unique time span where people are actually hiring people irrespective of what their records are or if they've been in trouble with the law. And what I found to be the case is that you give a person job skills, job training, and an actual job to go to. And if it's a decent paying job with benefits, they're much, much less likely to reoffend. So we really solve two problems at the same time. And so we're excited. We have 3 different counties in the state who have partnered with us at the Department of Attorney General, and we're excited to get started.
There are clearly a bunch of people who come out and do need an opportunity. We also know, you know this from all of the time that you've spent in courtrooms, we also have some bad eggs. How do you try to delineate the difference between the two as you try to move the right people into this program?
Well, we're starting with a total of 450 defendants who currently have cases pending. And in the 3 counties where we're doing this, which is Wayne County, Genesee County, and Marquette County, the elected prosecutors of those counties will be selecting the applicants. And each one of them will have their own system. But I think there are going to be a variety of different factors that they look at because they want to set this to be a program that is going to be successful. And so I think that, they're going to be making those selections themselves. And my hope is that, we will find people who really badly want a job and are willing to do what it takes to sustain themselves throughout the program. And if they're successful, if they hold that job down for a year and they get good performance reviews, ultimately the case will be dismissed.
I think that, and I've said this before on the program, we seem to have a real problem trying to figure out exactly what we want our corrections department and system to be. On the one hand, some people expect it to just kind of be a warehouse to put bad, unruly, law-breaking people. Other people want it to be a rehabilitator. And I think a lot of people argue that it doesn't do either of those things particularly well. Is there a way for us to kind of change the way we view what we want a prison or a system to be?
Well, what I think a model system really is what we see with Vocational Village, which we have in the Michigan Department of Corrections. And, in that program, they provide job training and skilled trades training to inmates that are going to be released sometime soon, so that when they get back out on the street, they have not just really a job, but they have a career to go into. And we know that their recidivism rates are incredibly low. So we hope to emulate that with people before they even get to the point where they're in the Michigan Department of Corrections and divert them away from the criminal justice system, but into a job, understanding that in all likelihood, if they maintain that employment and they get those job skills, they're much less likely to reoffend. And not only are we not paying as taxpayers to incarcerate them, but they're actually adding to the tax base, and they're fulfilling these jobs that we really need employees to enter the workforce.
Well, in fact, we do know that we have this massive shortage of workers right now. A lot of people looking for employees, but it's another thing, I think, for some to open those opportunities and doors to people who have come to them from walking out of prison. Have you been able to yet gauge the amount of embrace, I guess, that business owners and leaders are going to give the program?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every prospective employer that we've spoken to, every business we've spoken to is incredibly excited to be part of this program. And so I actually haven't had any employers that I've spoken to that have said no to us yet. And in fact, they feel as though we are not starting with enough applicants because they want more people. But I think the important thing to remember about this is that this program will be providing all kinds of things that normally make it hard for people in this situation to hold down a job. So there's going to be wraparound services if people have substance abuse issues, mental health issues, if they're food or housing insecure. We're going to be providing assistance with those things, and even transportation, which is often a barrier for somebody to get a job and keep a job.
Yeah.
So I think this will be an experiment that will work, and eventually I think it'll become a permanent program, not just in these 3 counties, but likely all around the state of Michigan.
We're going to keep a close eye on it. We certainly hope it works. I wanted to quickly, before I ran out of time, get to a couple of the things with you, if I could. You've become very active in trying to challenge Michiganders to be a little bit more aggressive and fight for their rights when it comes to the many power outages that we have seen. It is one of the biggest complaints that we get here at Local 4 from viewers upset about the way that this last couple of months has gone. You've become pretty active about people wanting to put more of this in their own hands as much as they can.
Well, technically, I'm the chief consumer advocate on behalf of the state of Michigan. And if I'm not going to fight for the rights of ratepayers in this state, then I don't know whose job that is. And so, yeah, I'm demanding accountability from DTE and consumers and other utilities. And I think, you know, these power outages, the number of power outages we're having, the severity of them, the length of them, is unacceptable. I think there's more that the utilities can and should be doing. And I'm demanding that the Michigan Public Service Commission go to greater lengths to assist customers. What we're seeing right now is simply unacceptable.
Dana, I got to get to a break, unfortunately. I got a million other things I'd love to talk to you about. We'll do that again on a future program. You're always good to join us. I really appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Attorney General Dana Nessel.